last week I was able to be a part of the Parkview mission team to Poland and along the border of the Ukraine. And I know we've had 4 teams go now. I was a part of team 4. We have a couple more teams going. We have one, I think, going in July, one going later in the fall. And want to encourage you to do that if you get an opportunity. But I know that we had a lot of storms that we encountered. And I know that we've probably had 80 or 90 people or something like that be able to go on these mission trips so far. But there's thousands and thousands of us around Parkview. And so I want to spend just a couple of minutes letting you know some of the real life storms that are going on there right now as we sit here this weekend. This is a picture of our team number 4. This is actually in O'Hare Airport, okay? The whole trip started out with literally a storm. The team here from Chicagoland had to wait for about 5 or 6 hours because their flight was delayed because of storms. Actually, the airport, they asked them to all go to the food court and gather in the food court, because there were so many storms coming. They didn't want them, I guess, near the windows and the glass and stuff like that. I don't know if you've ever had to get in a food court at an airport and huddle down, but that's a storm. I don't think you want to do that. That's not necessarily a good thing. My flight that I took actually had like a 14-hour delay because of weather and canceled flights and things like that. So there were storms just going into the whole trip. When we got to Poland and the border of the Ukraine, we spent most of our time in this very small little city called Przemyśl. Everybody say Przemyśl. It's kind of fun to say, isn't it? Przemyśl. It's spelled like P-R-Z-E-M-Y-L-S. Przemyśl. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, the whole time we were there, we're basically working with Ukrainian refugees. And we did that in schools, we did that in refugee centers. And for many of the nights, we worked along the train station, which was just challenging, inspiring, hard to watch as these families would come, mainly moms with little kids because their dads needed to remain in the Ukraine to fight. Unless you have 4 or 5 kids, you have to stay there. And so the moms with lots of littles. It was snowing several of the days we were there. And so like here's one of the families we're serving. They come from a long trip from days or weeks in the Ukraine to get here to the train station. And then they just wait to see if they can get on one of these slow moving trains on into Germany that takes about 18 hours for them to get to. And it was an amazing, hard, emotional, stormy time with them. Here's a picture of a little boy that as you talk and see these little kids there, you can just see in their eyes the challenging times they've been through. It's like the things they've seen or experienced are just incredible. While we were there, we also got to work with several churches and pastors. This is a guy named Pastor Czesław and his wife. I got to be at their church and preach last Thursday before Good Friday, and our whole team got to spend time with them. While we were spending time with them, he told us all kinds of stories about things they had seen and been a part of, challenging times, sobering times in the midst of these people. He talked about when the war began, they have about 100 people in their church, and they were flooded with refugees. This little town of Przemyśl is about 40,000 people, but they've processed 3 million refugees. 40,000 people in the town, 3 million refugees have come through right there at the border. It's just, you can imagine, it's just made all new, literally paths in the town are new because there's so many new people. And he talked about the fact that they put these people in all of their homes. They filled all 100 people in their church, filled all their homes with people, with refugees, and then they ran out, so they started putting them in their church, in their auditorium, in their Sunday school classrooms. I went and found one of the little kids' classrooms that has all of the beds off to the side where they're helping people bunk and that sort of thing. Just an inspiring person. One last thing to show you from the trip. This is this guy, Pastor Oleg, and Pastor Oleg is an incredible story. He has a church in Krakow, which is one of the large cities in Poland, a church of maybe 100, 150 people that's helping hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people each week with food. And we brought a bunch of food to him. We filled up this huge room of food, and I was talking to him and said, hey, what will happen, tomorrow? How long will this last? And he said, all that food will last about a day. And I said, well, then where's the next load coming? How do you know the next load? And he says, we don't know. It just always shows up. I mean, it's like the book of Acts happening in there. Isn't that cool? That's what they said. He literally says it just always shows up. Another really cool thing about him, just to show you the world we live in and where we are today and what's really happening and some of the challenges of the world, Pastor Oleg also had a church right up along the Russian and Ukraine border before this church in Krakow. It was right in that area where the war was starting, the occupied territory, and the Russian soldiers, he's fairly famous in this area because of some of the abuse he took. The Russian soldiers would come over and try and get him to renounce his faith and shut down his church. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to renounce his Christianity, so they ended up capturing him, beating him, torturing him, putting him in solitary confinement, and eventually letting him go. But he reached out to me at one point through an interpreter and grabbed my North Face jacket that I have on there, and he said, Todd, there was a point in my life not too long ago where my whole body, from my head down to my toes, was the color of your jacket because of how I'd been beaten. And he just has this incredible story of just going through these hard, stormy times. And this is happening in our world around us. Now, there's lots of beautiful stories of what God is doing as well and sustaining people and bringing people peace in the midst of these storms too. But that's going on. And